Hello, my name is Paul Crowe. I'm chair of the Department of Humanities, and prior to that, I was director of the David Lamb Center for 7 years. I've been teaching at SFU since 2005, and that included teaching in the Asia Canada program. So in my work in the David Lamb Center, we actually took up a project about Canada's Chinatowns, and I thought it would be nice in this video just to draw attention to this publication, which is actually a compilation of smaller pieces that were done as overviews of the histories of Chinatowns in Canada. We actually worked on 10 of them across the country and worked with local communities a lot too as we undertook this project over about a 5-year period. The we decided to publish the whole thing as a single volume, and this is that volume. It's trilingual, so it's in Chinese, it's in French, and also in English. So we provided them free of charge to people. So if people are interested in an overview of the history of Chinatown, it's an interesting piece to have a look at. I think Chinatown is important because its very uniqueness architecturally um, tells a story to people who visit the neighborhood. It says that something happened here. This is a part of the fabric of Canadian history, and I think it's of interest to tourists. I know I was VP at the Sun Yat-sen Garden for several years, and we had so many tourists come through Chinatown, and they were deeply fascinated from all different parts of the world. So there's an immediate fascination with this place. Well, it looks different. There's a different vibe on the street. Um, the food is different in the restaurants. And it's that difference that makes it so interesting. And makes it a vibrant place to gather and socialize. On another level, um, if people are curious and they dig a little deeper, it can also remind us of a story in Canada that's not so good, but it's a story we need to be aware of, and that is that Chinatowns were formed out of social, political, and economic necessity, because people coming from the Sayap area, or from the area around the Pearl River Delta, that's where most people came from in the 19th century, from China. They came from that region, bringing with them their local dialects, customs, interests in food, and so on. They came here, and when they landed, they didn't have the economic resources, they didn't have the linguistic capabilities necessarily, um, no jobs, and so on. So they were in a tough situation already. But of course, that was compounded by the more or less hostile relationship um, that people of European origin um, had with them. They were excluded, they were marginalized on every level. Um, so the Chinese, they were smart, they stuck together. They found ways to share economic resources, to support each other, to buoy up uh, I guess, their sense of hope in this new place, to give them connections with work and so on. So I don't want to go into too much. I don't go into a lot of detail, but I mean, if you think about it, in 1886, which is roughly when the Chinatown in Vancouver began, I think there were less than 100 Chinese here, and they needed to stick together, and it formed a hub, around Carroll Street and what's now Pender Street. That's where it really started, and it expanded from there. Um, so through the 19th century into the early 20th century, that's where people came if they came here to find out where they could get a job, a place to sleep, and a meal, and social support. So, why is Chinatown important? It's important because it's a unique cityscape that gives us a kind of a very basic sense of the diversity that built Canada. And it's also important because it gives us historical memory. And with our historical memory, we know better who we are as a people, as a nation together. We know where we came from, we know the errors we made, and we kind of have a better sense of where we're going. Without memory, you lose those things. So Chinatown's important for retaining our memory.
I think Vancouver's Chinatown is important because it's the fabric of Canadian history. You know, in many ways, the history of Vancouver's Chinatown is as long as, and in fact is longer than Confederation itself. You know, when the CPR railway was completed, Chinese laborers had dispersed throughout the prairies, and some went back to China, but the majority had stayed in Chinatown. Of course, back in that time, it wasn't called Chinatown. It was a geographic piece of land, a swampland in the part of the city not even called Vancouver yet. So in many ways, this is an undiscovered piece of history that is slowly being documented now, and is forever part of Canadian history. And growing up, I think many of us didn't learn about Chinatown. We went down to Chinatown to buy groceries with our parents, grandparents. We went to Chinatown to eat at the restaurants. We knew about it, but we never thought about it consciously as a part of our national past and national history. So for that reason, Chinatown is significantly important in our understanding of ourselves as a people and as a country in Canada.
I guess for my sister and I was really that our grandmother lived in the neighborhood right in Chinatown for about 15 years independently, and we were lucky enough to be able to find her assisted housing in Chinatown. And this is the community where she felt at home and like she belonged. And after she passed, you know, we realized that wow, we as young Chinese Canadians, not so young anymore, but we owe a lot to the community that's been built here, all the institutions like the clans, societies, and government associations, and the place that this is has helped a lot of people, and we want to see